I am what most people would consider to be a very well-educated person. I have on my resume 10 years of college and 3 degrees, including a doctorate, and I have been a college professor for 35 years, a profession in which there is a presumption that we will keep learning new things. So since I am retiring at the end of this upcoming spring semester, I thought you would all benefit from me sharing my vast wealth of knowledge and wisdom with you. So, you lucky devils, today I'm going to tell you what I know. You might want to get some paper and a pen so you can take notes. Here's what I know. Diddly squat. That's right. I know diddly squat about the world. What I know is a minuscule drop in the bucket compared to what I don't know. Dave had those wonderful boxes for the Time for All Ages, but the proportions of the boxes were way off. But yeah, the box for the stuff he knew was smaller, but it would be really tiny, you know, if it were my box. And the box of stuff I don't know would be huge. Sure, I could tell you about the use of Gregorian chant Cantus Firmus technique in the 14th century Ars Nova Notre Dame Mass by Guillaume de Machaut. But really, who the hell cares? I know little of anything of wide importance. One of the greatest minds the world has ever seen, Socrates, famously declared, "All I know is that I know nothing." This seeming contradiction even has a name, Socratic irony, or the Socratic paradox. When the Oracle of Delphi was asked who is the wisest person in Athens, she answered, "Socrates is the wisest person in Athens." This certainly surprised Socrates because, as we've learned, he claimed to know nothing. But being brilliant, he deduced that the very reason he was considered wise was precisely because he was able to recognize that he knew nothing. If recognizing that he knew nothing was a difficult job for a genius like Socrates, imagine how daunting a task it is for us lowly peons. Signs of this lack of awareness are all around us. 50% of men say they could land an airplane in an emergency with the help from air traffic control. 96% of professors say they are above average teachers. They call that the Lake Wobegon effect, where all the children are above average. Men drown at twice the rate of women because they overestimate their ability to swim when drunk. American high school students routinely say their math skills are high, despite having some of the lowest math scores in the developed world. There is a name for this phenomenon, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning and Kruger discovered that there is a point where somebody is so incompetent on a subject that they don't realize just how incompetent they really are, and as a result, grossly overestimate their knowledge or skill. Or as the philosopher and mathematician Bertrand Russell pointed out, the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people are so full of doubts. And there is a Buddhist folk saying that I love. The world is divided into those who are right. Think about it. So allow me to confess my ignorance by giving you a list of just a few things that I don't know, but which are important enough that I wish I did. I don't know why a movement from a Beethoven piano sonata can move us to tears. Why we're physically, emotionally, and sexually attracted to certain people. Why, after 39 years of marriage, my wife still puts up with me, and in fact, even seems to be fond of me on occasion. I don't know where babies come from. I mean, I know, of course, the sexual mechanism that gets things started, but really, How does this create a brand new consciousness? And speaking of consciousness, I don't know what that is and why I feel like I'm a separate entity from everyone else. Really, Monsieur Descartes, I think, therefore I am is the best you've got? I don't know how the universe came into being. I don't know how to reconcile a universe described by quantum physics that is so counterintuitive to my lived experience. I don't know how people can support certain political candidates who show us repeatedly that they don't have the moral character that I would think is a minimum requirement for holding office. But I don't want to jeopardize the church's status as a tax-exempt religious organization, so I will say no more about that. I don't know what happens to us after we die. I don't know how I got so lucky in choosing a spouse. I used to say that that is the one thing in my life that I have done with the most excellence. But then I realized that the large majority of people go into marriage thinking that their love will last a lifetime, but it very often doesn't. So now I just call myself lucky. I don't know why people are so intent on preventing other people from reading certain books in schools and public libraries. I don't know how an Amish community can find the grace necessary to forgive someone who murdered some of their children in a schoolhouse 20 years ago or so, and then attend the memorial service of the murderer with hearts free from hate. I don't know why my life has been so blessed with love, health, education, and employment, while other people I know who are no less intelligent, hardworking, virtuous, and deserving than I am have had life kick them in the gut over and over again. I don't know what in the world can be going on in the minds of racists. I don't understand why over and over again throughout history there have been genocides. I don't understand why so many men treat women so badly. I don't know anything about gender identity and why some people identify as male, some people identify as female, and some people identify as neither. And I sure as hell don't know why society, and by society, I mean people, made it so difficult for a local 16-year-old transgender girl just to live her life, even with an extremely supportive family and school, that she thought that her only option was to take her own life last September. I'm quite certain that I'm not alone in not knowing these things. Does anyone here have a definitive answer to any of these questions? I didn't think so. We've only begun to scratch the surface of knowledge about topics like cosmology, genetics, consciousness, love. So given our massive collective ignorance of our world, what are the implications for us as spiritual and societal human beings? I think we should start with the acknowledgement that none of us knows diddly squat. And I hope that that acknowledgement deflates our egos by an order of magnitude, at least. That should make it easier to work on the thing that should be a bedrock of our spiritual practice, the cultivation of humility. St. Augustine said, humility is the foundation of all the other virtues. Hence, in the soul in which this virtue does not exist, there cannot be any other virtue except in mere appearance. New York Times columnist David Brooks, whose reading we had this morning, says, humility is the awareness that there's a lot you don't know, and a lot of what you think you know is distorted or wrong. I wholeheartedly agree. I wish more people would follow the advice of the bumper sticker. Don't believe everything you think. In my view, one of the most important goals of a college education is not just to teach you stuff, but to teach you how to put your inherited and closely held assumptions about the world under close scrutiny to see if they hold up. and to be able to abandon them if they don't. That is an important life skill that far too few people know how to do. That's what critical thinking and scientific method are all about. David Brooks goes on, if you are modest and have an awareness of the limits of your own knowledge, you know you need the people who disagree with you to correct for your own errors. If you think you have the truth 100%, then you think the people who disagree with you are just in the way. And so we see a rise in polarization. Some of this may be due in part to technology. The onslaught of information is so constant that it's hard to find the stillness in our lives that leads to true wisdom. And social media has created the age of the selfie, where everything we post is about us. This is the antithesis of humility. The result is that humility seems to be in short supply these days. I'm thinking of the braggadocio of professional football players when they make a good play. I'm thinking of politicians who state without irony that I and only I can fix this problem. I'm thinking of the shameless rebroadcasting of wild conspiracy theories that have zero basis in fact and that are patently absurd on their faces. Other examples are all around us. Would people who cultivate humility tell others what they should not be able to read in their local library? When humble people who know they know nothing about medicine tell a pregnant woman whose own health is at risk that they can't have an abortion? Would people who acknowledge that we really don't know much about love tell others who they can marry? And would a society who practices humility make the lives of LGBTQ plus people so difficult? For most of us, having a humble character doesn't just happen on its own. Its cultivation benefits from active practice. For me, that includes meditating on the times when I have felt deep humility. Not surprisingly, many of these times have occurred when I was in nature. For example, my college best friend and I were sleeping in a small tent in the wilderness of the California mountains when off in the distance, we heard thunder. The storm approached us slowly but inexorably until it was right on top of us. Outside, it was as light as day with lightning strikes. The thunder was deafening as it echoed off the slopes of the peaks that surrounded us until and then it passed us just as slowly as it had approached us until the thunder was just a faint rumble far in the distance. The sense of smallness and insignificance I felt in the presence of such an awesome display of nature's power was a spiritual experience that I will never forget. Another humbling nature experience came in 2019 when I finally got around to visiting Yosemite National Park. Gazing for the first time on Yosemite Valley in all of its magnificent glory, surrounded by peaks with huge cascading waterfalls and the massive granite walls of El Capitan and Half Dome, was a breathtaking experience. That view remains to this day the single most amazing thing I have seen in my life. It was the world at its most radiant and provided me with a profound I'm not worthy moment. I also feel the same humble awe when I contemplate great works of art like Bach's Goldberg Variations or Shakespeare's King Lear. Experiencing such perfection is akin to touching the sleeve of God. I also find it very useful to contemplate people who live lives of humility and who are role models to emulate. Sometimes these people are public figures. I think of former President Jimmy Carter, whose humanitarian work has eliminated suffering for literally millions of people with his steadfast drive to eradicate guinea worm, and who pounded nails to build houses for Habitat for Humanity until well into his 90s. I think of the actor Keanu Reeves, who exudes humility, gratitude, and strength, and which is made more impressive considering the tragedy he has faced in his life. But my primary role model is someone I knew personally. A high school teacher I had, Bill Dixon, became the most important man in my life. During the school year, he taught public speaking classes and directed the annual drama club play. In the summer, he spent his days teaching swimming lessons for free to anyone in the community who wanted them, and his nights opening the gym so we could play volleyball. He lived a life of vocation to others, especially his family, without any hint of pride. And yet, as I became closer and closer to him and his family, I eventually discovered that he was a brilliant man who could answer just about any question on any subject you cared to ask him about. And I remember how gobsmacked his own son was when he started college at San Diego State University and found that there were a dozen trophies there with his father's name on them. It turns out that his father held swimming records at that university that had stood for decades. His children had no idea. Jimmy Carter, Keanu Reeves, Bill Dixon, they are all most definitely the kind of people we are looking for that David Brooks talked about in this morning's reading. So I've told you some of the things I don't know, but there are some important things that I think I've learned from my 67 years on this earth. I share them with you humbly, with full recognition that I may be wrong. I know we must love others, love life, love the world, and love ourselves. Although love isn't quite all you need, if society's hearts were full of love, it would be unlikely that we had let our neighbors go hungry, unclothed, homeless, and sick. I know my wife and daughters love me. I know we should be very broad in how we define family and make sure it's a large tent that can include and protect lots of people, not just blood relatives. The universe is a vast, complex, and wondrous place, and there is no way any of us will catch more than a glimpse of its truth. Explore and embrace it anyway. I have never met anyone whose life tale would not make a fantastic novel. We must treat others, all others, no exceptions, with kindness. It is important to maintain an attitude of gratitude. This is the soil in which humility grows. I know that daily meditation practice, especially meditations on gratitude like we had today, help to open a heart to wonder and well-being. I know that anger kills. It kills other people and it kills your own soul. We must release it. To that end, I know we must forgive freely, quickly, and thoroughly. And finally, despite having no idea about the source of my existence, I am exceedingly happy and grateful to be alive. Thank you for letting me share these thoughts with you this morning. I do appreciate the irony of thinking that I have something to say worth saying in a sermon is itself a non-humble act, but I don't claim to be as wise as Socrates, only that I strive to recognize my own ignorance. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song. I think that this hymn fits our theme of humility beautifully. The first half of each verse extols the virtues of the homeland, but then quickly, before we have a chance to slip into pride, the lyrics pivot to remind us that other lands have these same qualities. The hymn ends with a wish of peace for everyone's lands.